City Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Martin. Here. Councilmember Mora.
Here.
Councilmember Sarno. Mayor Pro Tem Zamora.
Here.
Mayor Rodriguez.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public comments are now open. Anyone joining us through Zoom can use the raise hand function if you wish to make a public comment on any item on the agenda only. The city clerk will see if you have raised your hand through the Zoom application. For those that are here to make a public comment in person, you will have an opportunity once the city clerk announces your name. You will have 3 minutes to speak. City Clerk, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak today?
Madam Mayor, we don't have any speakers today.
Thank you. I will now close public comments and move on to the next item. Study session item number 4, Water Capital Improvement Plan. I would like to call on Director of Public Works, Noé Negrete.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. So we're here to talk about the capital improvement plan specifically for water. If you remember, a few months ago, we did the CIP for everything but water. And the reason why we do that is because it comes from different funding. So our CIP, if you recall, we have the CIP UUT fund. We spent about $16 million in allocations there. We also had some redevelopment money left over as well, about I think it was seven or 8 million that we also spent. So today, hopefully much shorter day, we're talking about specifically water projects and how we want to spend the money that we have for our water CIP for water. So we'll go through in your packet. You'll see you had 2 tables in there, an Exhibit A and Exhibit B. And actually the Exhibit B showed the projects that were completed last year. I'll walk you through those real quick. And then we're proposing 7 projects for the CIP for the next 4 years. We'll walk you through those. And then we'll talk about the available funding to fund those projects. Okay, so we did complete 4 projects last year. I kind of went in chronological order. So we did focus in Exhibit B to the right, the first blue tab. So we looked at the our interconnection with Whittier. Exhibit B, if you can, while we're waiting for that. There you go. There's 4 projects there. And the first one we did was the upgrade of the connection with Whittier. So if you recall, that was one of the projects that we had at our last study session, was to increase the capacity there of that line to get more water. That was completed to the tune of just under $650,000. After that, we had 2 smaller projects. We do have 2 water reservoirs in the city that help with the system. And both of those were inspected. Like to inspect those about roughly every 5 years or so. I think we were going on year 6. So we got those completed last year. And then we also started and completed the assessment of water well number 2. So if you recall, in early, a couple of months back, we asked for a change order to do more site investigations. That was completed approximately a couple of weeks ago. And now we're just waiting for that report. All signs point to it being still a viable well. And you'll see that in our next slide, where we're talking about the next projects, we want to continue working on that well. So if you look at last year, we spent it just under $840,000 on CIP for water. Okay, any questions on that? I got fact sheets if you want to see that, but we can go back now to the 7 projects that we're proposing. You want to go to Exhibit A, please? So again, in your packet, you have the Exhibit A. There's 7 projects listed. All is from the water CIP fund, which we'll go over in the last slide in terms of the available funding. You'll see the amount of the project in total, and then you'll also see over the next 4 years how we anticipate to spend that. Some of these can be multi-year projects. Some could be finished in the same year. So again, slow me down if you want to. I got fact sheets on each of these 2, but I just did want to walk you through briefly. If you have more questions, we're prepared to do that. So first one is water well number 2. So we talked about, we did the assessment, and the assessment, basically, we wanted to make sure that there was still the known contaminant that we had, and that came back to be true. We only have that known contaminant still to this day, based on the sampling that we did. Number 2, we want to make sure that the well, the casing, if you want to put the thing that goes down the ground, if that's still viable, if that's still able to use to be able to draw the water out. That was a change order that we did recently, was to make sure that was the case. If I'm wrong, I think the first 70 feet or so was the one that we think may have issues. Again, we're going to wait for the report in terms of what that's the final. There are some things we could do, Jeff. There are some things we can do for the top 70 feet. As an example, we can reline that piece, right? Stick a liner in, and that'll extend that service life of that pipe without having to do the whole casing again. So things do look pretty good. We're also looking at the next step would be treatment. So what we're proposing here is actually 2 projects, really one. We're doing a temporary system to treat the contaminant to remove that. What I mean by temporary, it's a package system that we would come in and put that in, and that would allow us a couple of things to do that. Because normally what we're really good at is we're good at designing, right? And then we design, and then we go out to bid for construction. That's what our bread and butter is as a city. But that takes long, right? It takes long to get the designer. It takes long to design it. It takes long to get the construction going. This is a creative way where we can do a temporary system. Okay, there still needs to be some design, but we would try to be creative and not allowing it to take as much time as normal. Put in the system and see if it works. And if it works, then we're able to get off of buying the imported water. So that allows us to save money, number 1, which is huge, right? So we can have more money in our water CIP. Number 2 is that it'll also allow us to get data that we don't have today. Meaning, if that system is working, now we can get data back, how well it's working, or is there any additional treatment we need to do? So then we can go to a design. But in the meantime, while we're designing, we have a temporary system in place, and we're not having to buy water all from MWD. So that's that 2-phase process. Why are we doing that project first? Because at Water Well 12, we have more contaminants. That's project number 3. Even though it's a newer well, we have more contaminants to deal with, and it's more expensive. So what our thought is, as soon as we can get the temporary in, we can accumulate more money, right? We can get data in terms of the contaminants, make sure there's no new contaminants, because what we've been doing is we've been running the well a week at a time. That's different to running it every day. When you run it every day, now you see what is happening. Now, is that 1 week? Is that a correct cross sample of what would happen every day? We don't know. We think it is, but we don't know. That's why we want to do a temporary first. Then we can design the permanent. At some point now, we want to design 12 now, because we want to have 2 sources of water in that zone. As long as we have 2 operational, we're not having to buy MWD water, and we could save that money to put back in our own infrastructure. And that's what we want to be able to do. As when we work on 1 and take down 1, we still have the other one operational. Right? Right now, we don't have any operationals but to buy all of our water. If we only focus on 1, and for some reason that would go down, we'd be back in the same position we are today. So we're trying to avoid that. So our top priority is getting a source of water in this zone. Whether it be 2 or 12, that's going to be our priority. Based on the assessment and the reports that we have, 2 would be the fastest track and also the least expensive. We want to do 2, but those are the top 3 projects we need to get done. After that, numbers 4, 5, which are booster station rehabs. So again, we have reservoirs and we have booster stations that go with those reservoirs. We need to upgrade those. Primarily, we need to change the motor from a gas engine to an electric engine, And a lot of it has to do with emissions compliance. Okay. As a city, we're under a lot of compliance things in terms of emissions. And with these motors running so often, we're getting to the point now where we may not comply running those motors. So we need to change to an electric motor. At the same time, if we're going to do that, let's look at that whole structure and make it modern so that it can last us for another 50 years. The last two, or the number 6, is the upgrade to the Scada system. Scada is just our remote monitoring system that gives us data as well on the system, pressures, water levels, that kind of thing. It is due for an upgrade. And then lastly, not to ignore our connection with MWD, that's the last project. We still have that connection. That connection, the actual vault itself is starting to have a lot of chunks of concrete flake off on the inside of that vault. So even if we were to have our own groundwater, we still want to maintain that connection. So the last project we would want to do, once we get 2 and 12 operational, then we want to go take that offline and fix that. So that way it's still our third option for a source of water. Now, all that, if you add that up together, is $11 million. Okay, how do we pay for this? Go back to the PowerPoint. So currently, cash on hand in our water reserve fund, we have $7 million. Next, I got it here. Maybe not.
Oh, I have a quick question. When you say temporary, how long does a temporary last?
Great question. It could be months, it could be years. It just depends on the data that we get in there. What we'd like it to be in an ideal situation is anywhere between 12 to 15 months. That would be ideal. Okay. Even more ideal would be 8 months, right? But we want to put it in first to see how that well reacts. And then based on the information, that'll help us either design it faster. The other part of it is the lead time of getting whatever parts we want to be able to filter out the water. Just think of it as a giant filter. Okay, eventually we're going to design that. We need to order it and get it. How soon can we get that? And then if it works, you have to change. So think of it as a filter. Okay, we have something that we're trying to get out of the water. So we're putting a giant filter in there, and we need to change that filter every so often to make sure that that contaminant is still getting out of the water. That's what we're trying to do. Well, the Whittier connection we did, the existing one, we made larger, okay? We were also looking at possibly a joint venture with Whittier and Pico Rivera at one point. Pico Rivera has since pulled out, and Whittier now has placed that project on hold. As far as Downey goes, we do have an interconnect with Downey. It is an emergency connection. It is operational, but it is not viable as a permanent day-to-day source of water at this point in its current condition. That's right at Florence, right in front of the giant RV, roughly right in there.
What about Norwalk?
We have an interconnect, but we give them water.
Okay, but even if we do Downey, Norwalk, and ourselves, maybe Whittier?
So Norwalk, as far as I know, doesn't have the ability to give us water. We give them water because they don't have the ability to give water to their residents in a certain area. Downey, like I said, the interconnect works on an emergency basis, but not on a permanent basis. And what was the other city you asked about?
No, I just included Whittier because you said Pico Rivera.
Yeah, in Whittier, we do have,
Yeah,
we do have that
figured,
now.
if we can get the 4 cities like that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the well for Norwalk that we help with, where do we connect from for Norwalk to help facilitate their residents?
The connection is roughly at Carmenita and Rosecrans, right where the Arco station is there. That's where the connection is. And it serves that area south of Rosecrans.
The ones that we're talking about are not helping that
Both of those wells would help feed that because they're on the south side of town.
Norwalk and helping to facilitate, maybe helping us with these wells to maybe get them to help pitch in to.
No, we have not. How it works is we whatever water they take we charge them that water. And we actually charge them at the highest rate. So we have different tiers. I think we have 1, 2, 3 now. Actually, all their water is charged at tier 3. So that's the extent of the agreement with them now. We have not approached them about the wells.
And then that quote that we had with Pico, Whittier, and ourselves, is it Pico pulled out of the agreement?
Well, we were trying to get an agreement.
Oh,
We
trying
didn't
to-
even get that far. We had a draft of the agreement, and Pico did pull out. So Whittier, in a nutshell, Whittier has 8 wells, 5 are not operational. And they're trying to figure out how to get more wells online. I think they stopped looking at a new well. They're trying to rehab a couple of the 5 first. They're trying to find funding for that. Our situation is kind of up and down our area right now because of the different contaminants. Different wells are becoming offline because they're not meeting the drinking water standards, and everybody's out there now looking for money and trying to find the right treatment to be able to get those contaminants out of the water.
Do we know the reason why Pico pulled out, or is that more of a?
I don't know the reason.
Okay.
If you're asking me to guess, my guess would be that it would be a very minimal benefit for them because I think they had enough wells to be able to provide supply for their residents, and this other one would be minimal impact to them.
What about unincorporated Whittier? How does that work for them with their water?
Private companies. So you could have Orchardale Water District,
Okay.
Suburban Water District. Even in our city, even though we do serve parts of Downey and Norwalk, north of Charlesworth is not City of Santa Fe Springs Water. It's San Gabriel Valley Water Company. That's their area that they give water to. So the water boundary doesn't always coincide with the city boundaries. Okay. So we do have $7 million on hand now in the water CIP fund. We did a conservative estimate of $1 million projected into the reserve for each of those 4 years we're talking about. So that'll give us an additional $4 million for a total of $11 million. That matches what we're proposing in those 7 projects, $11 million. Now, we're still going to go try to get other funds, right? Even though you tell me that we have 11 and we're going to spend 11, that's not good practice. We still want to go after more money. So for example, water well number 12, if you recall, I think the city manager let you know last time that Assemblywoman Calderon's office approached us for an opportunity to get grants. And so far, they've selected water well number 12 to go forward. It doesn't mean we have it yet. It just means it's going forward in the process. So we're hopeful that we can get some money through her office. And we asked for $2.2 million on that. So if we get that, then we could subtract the 2.2 from the 11, put that other 2.2 we were going to spend back in our pocket and keep on going to try to get other funds for this.
And that's presently sitting in the House Appropriations Committee. So we're hoping that goes through.
That pretty much concludes the presentation. Again, I have sheets for each project if you want to go through that kind of detail. But we're here to essentially ask for the approval of the 2022-2025 water capital improvement plan. Happy to take questions from you.
From here, we're just giving a directive for the
Just
6 o'clock.
you're just approving those projects
Yeah.
as the ones we want to move forward with.
Let me see.
I'll second if that's the.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So ordered. I would like to adjourn this meeting.
Good job, Noe.
Thank you.